Live streaming is on.
All right, so we're ready to get back into the management?
Yes,
Okay, so let's start voting on whether we think that generally it should be every week, every 2 weeks, every month, and then we can decide on the front pay stop or on the half pay stop.
Okay, weekly.
So I vote for every 2 weeks, but Alberto is voting for weekly, I think.
Shall we put our vote next to here? Next in column H?
Okay, I'm back.
That's on
Sorry.
6, 7, and 8. Line 67, 66, and 68.
Okay.
66, 67, 68.
67, 68.
Weekly, every 2 weeks, or every month?
Weekly. Weekly.
This is only about the upfront pay stop.
Yes.
So this is just in general. This is about the work.
Okay, this is about the work.
All right, about all.
We can discuss upfront pay stop or hard pay stop or whatever. So how often do you think status updates should happen, right? If you think status updates should happen every week, it's really regardless of whether that's a half pay stop, a hard stop, an upfront pay stop, or whatever. If it's supposed to happen every week, then it's supposed to happen every week, you know?
Yeah. Great. Yeah.
Pay stop
For me, every week, for sure. We can vote, right? Wouldn't better to vote on the options, Jay?
Yeah, we could vote on the options. So
yes, you can put the names on top.
Yeah, names on top.
So all right, so it's clear that 2 weeks.
But 6.3 is not far behind, so every 2 weeks is definitely a priority. So the next question would be, do we want to do a half pay stop every week? So,
I mean, here we established that the work should happen, the status update should happen every 2 weeks, right?
So you just want to do every 2 weeks?
I mean, we just voted on when the work should happen, so it's every 2 weeks. So in my opinion, at this point, the half pay stop should be every 2 weeks, and then we would have a monthly upfront pay stop.
Why?
Because if the work happens every 2 weeks, right? We say, okay, the deadline for the work is every 2 weeks. So we can have we can start with a half pay stop every 2 weeks, and we can have one upfront pay stop every month. I don't know. We'll think about it. Wait.
Okay, so option number 1 would be weekly hard stop, 2-week half pay stop, and monthly upfront pay stop. Right?
Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, the hard stop is the half pay stop, right? We introduced the half pay stop, Jay, because the hard stop was not happy, right? Nobody cares if we are in hard stop. So we said this is not working. How can we make it better? And we said, right, why don't we introduce? Because we see that the upfront pay stop works very well, but the hard stop doesn't work at all. We said let's see this half pay stop. So I would say you miss the first deadline, which is the 2-week deadline. You go into hard stop / half pay stop. And if you miss the second deadline, then it's up from pay stop, and everybody just needs to focus on doing that.
I think that's option 1 then. I mean, I don't think we should get rid of hard stops. I think hard stops are important. And people should take them seriously, but yes, I understand why people don't, but that's a problem.
Yeah, I think they don't work. What works is the half pay stop. So I would just also for the budget we could think about introducing the half pay stop. I mean, when the deadline of the work is due and you don't meet the deadline, then you go into half pay stop. So you have this time where you're still getting half pay to meet the deadline. Then you have the other deadline, which is the upfront pay stop. Right? You didn't manage to, not even the half pay stop deadline helped. Then okay, now upfront pay stop. The work, if this work doesn't get done, no pay for everybody.
I mean, I just don't really know. I'm not 100% sure on it. I feel like to really understand it, answer the questions, I would need to look back at our half pay stop deadlines. But from what I remember, half pay stop deadlines were always
A week before upfront pay stop.
well, no, they were kind of part of like responsibility organizing and like the specific steps, right? Like the purpose of a half pay stop was to make sure we were on track to achieve the actual work being completed, right? But what you're saying here is that you're using a half pay stop as the actual deadline. I think it's a slightly different use than we used to.
Yeah, that's correct, Jay. You're right. Now that I remember, the half pay stop was based on the responsibilities. The upfront pay stop was based on the whole process, right? On the final output. So that half pay stop were there to make sure that we were on track, correct, with the timelines. Yeah, right. Yeah. So half pay stop is something completely separated from hard stops, and
I mean, it's not separate from hard stops. It's just like we were using it for a very specific purpose, and I don't think it actually got rid of the hard stop, right? It didn't. Or replaced it. It basically created a way that if you had a deadline, that you could have a half pay stop deadline for any step in the responsibility or any step in the process or responsibility in the process, so that if that particular step didn't get completed by that particular time, you knew that you weren't going to meet the deadline anyway. So it's like the idea is that the half pay stop would ensure that the deadline would be met.
Yeah, it was exactly that, Jay.
So for me, I think I would go with option 2.
I mean, this is slightly different because we don't have yet the responsibility organizing and the steps, so it's difficult to. But I mean, option 1, I like option 1 the best. Option 2, I like it as well.
I guess there's another option, which would be option 4, I guess, which would just be like 2-week hard stop, 1 monthly upfront pay stop, right? And then for me, this option 4 would be equivalent to option 3, line 68, in my perspective.
2 weeks hard stop.
Either way, no matter which one of these we approve, I think it's still a positive because it ensures that we're moving forward and we can always improve upon the policy.
2 week hard stop.
So it looks like we have
Martha, are you voting?
clear agreement.
Yes.
Weekly hard stop.
So it looks like it's just the original proposal, right? The require management status reports on work priorities from the team every 2 weeks to prevent upfront pay stop.
2 week hard stop.
It looks so. We just need to include every 2 weeks exactly when. So we want to do 72 hours before the executive support, or we want to do 24 hours.
Yeah, okay, so we have one more vote. Great. Good. Okay, so that would be line 40 to 53. All right, so down to line 95. All right, so on line 95, we're going to vote for options for the actual deadline. So we have new moons and full moons. We've got 3 days before new moons and full moons. Right? I think we can also do 2 days and 1 day as options, right? So 2 days before, 1 day before. I think all these are perfectly fine options.
2 weeks.
And then you have the alternative model, and this would be option 4. Let's see, option 4. Option 5. Option 5 would be on quarter moons, which would overlap with budget, right? So budget and accounting deadline. Okay, so is that all of the options? Can anyone think of any other options? Here, I'll just put it as option 6. Any other options?
I'm voting an 8 because I think it's very related to the executive support deadline, right? I mean, we want to have it 3 days before. It's in the middle of the week, so we can have an understanding on what to focus better for the rest of the week. So I think it's very beneficial to have it in the middle of the week.
Is option number 2 the half week, or is it exactly 3 days?
No, 3 days before executive deadline. So I would say exactly 72 hours.
Okay. That's before 8 hours. And then we have 4 hours. So I want to make another option. We can make option 6, which is instead of 72 hours, it would be the 8th moon. Okay.
So half week, 3 days before new moon and full moon. 3 days. So this is the same as option 2.
Except it's the actual 8th moon as opposed to the exact days. Basically the half week.
Okay. So I have a question, Jay.
Mhm.
So we can vote 8.5, correct?
Yeah.
But I mean, what if I vote 8.99?
I mean, I think that's
Al-
fine. I think it's still
Almost a 9, but it's not a 9. So
exactly. That's exactly what it is.
uh-huh.
Just like you technically can vote a 9.9999999, but you can't vote a 10.
Yeah, but the 9, anything 9 or above the 9, it's if everybody else doesn't vote 9, we bring it back to automatically as far as to an 8, but not an 8.5
If you
or
voted
8.
9.99999, we would bring it down to an 8.99999.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So,
Okay, cool. And just so you guys know, the 8th moon deadline is exactly and scientifically 12.5% and of moon, right? Percentage. And then you have 30 oh, actually no, I don't want to get into that. You know, there's two different types of we'll address that later. But anyways, the 8th moon has a specific percentage, exact percentage that can be calculated. It's not really necessary. We can still use the 3 days before and just kind of average out the 72 hours and not worry about it. But if we ever, once we get to doing 8th moons are a very helpful part of the lunar calendar. Okay?
Yeah, but this is not exactly 3 days. It's approximately 3 days before exactly.
Yeah, but we can just use the 3 days in instead of, but knowing that technically speaking, we could go to the 8th moon if we needed a specific deadline at any time for the 8th moon. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, but they're just telling you how to calculate the 8th moon because most places do not have the 8th moon calculated. It's pretty easy to calculate, and it's exactly a percentage depending on the sphere or circle of the moon, right? So when you look at the full moon would be 100%, right? And a quarter moon is 50% of the moon percentage, right? But a 8th moon is not 25%, right? So I believe it's 12.5% of the circle and 25% of the sphere. We need to double check that, but if you think about like a quarter moon is exactly 50% of the moon. You follow me? Of the circle.
Yes. Yes.
Whereas an 8th moon is not 25%, it's actually 12.5%. Because you look at the circle and not the sphere. So if you're looking at the sphere is 25%. But because we don't see the moon as a sphere, we see it as a circle, 12.5% of the circle is equivalent to 25% 8th moon, right?
Of the sphere. Oh, now I get it. That's why it's called the fourth 8 is the full moon.
Exactly.
Okay. Now I get it.
But anyways, there's other confusing things I don't want to go into. We can work out later. But anyways, let's go on to our proposal.
Yeah.
So our proposal is to require management status reports on work priorities from the team every 2 weeks on the 3rd and 7th each moon, 3 days before executive status report.
Yeah. 72 hours before exactly.
We'll say half week / 3 days / 72 hours. Okay, so technically speaking, in the proposal, it's the 8th moon, but we can just play around with the half week, the 3 days, the 72 hours. It doesn't need to be perfect. All right, it gives us a little wiggle room. Wiggle room is good, especially for the team. All right, I think that's the whole proposal. Any questions about?
Yeah, but the option that's asked, it's not the 8 moon, is exactly the 72 hours before.
Oh, you guys want to do 72 hours? Okay. So this would be on 3 days, 72 hours. 72 hours before executive status reports. So, and executive status reports is which are on new and full name. Okay.
Yeah, great. So now we can vote on the proposal.
So, 2 weeks.
Are there any questions on the proposal? Questions?
The details, we need to update the details.
What details?
Yes. So
Oh.
I can't take this away, this detail. It's already in the proposal. So.
Is that more? Oh yeah, it's already in the proposal. Yeah, okay.
So my question is, who will check, Alberto,
Check what?
on the management status of each worker?
I mean, that's up to the team. If Alberto is not here, right? If all of us aren't here, the team is still required to do this. It's still policy, right? So whoever is here needs to figure out how they want to achieve the policy. But
So
the
it's individually.
yeah, but the policy doesn't change based on who is
So,
responsible.
Joyce, did you read the proposal?
What proposal? This one? Yeah.
Did you read it? Okay. I'm going to read it again because to make it clear. So the proposal.
The bottom line is that the team is responsible to make sure the work gets done.
Yeah.
Right, which means we are all collectively responsible as a team. Otherwise, we all go on upfront pay stop. That's what an upfront pay stop is, right? An upfront pay stop means that it's not the responsibility of an individual. It's the responsibility of the team. In this case, the management team and the core team.
Okay, I thought because each one has work, right? So they're managing something, right? So I thought somebody will check.
Yeah, but we can assign anyone we want to make sure that this is checked on and addressed, right? But that is not applicable to the proposal, which is the policy. That would be applicable to the responsibility organizing and how we want to actually oversee achieving the policy and creating. We don't have responsibility for this, right? There's no responsibility. There's nothing. So once we approve the policy, then we can start the responsibility organizing and actually set it up how we want to manage this policy. It's a completely separate process. So the policy goes all the way up to the board and gets reviewed at the highest level. The management of the policy, how we choose to actually implement this policy and actually achieve the goal every 2 weeks, is up to us as the managers. That does not need to be reviewed by the executives and the board, right? Does that make sense? Unless there's issues, problems.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
No more questions from me.
But I mean, the bottom line is that either you, Joyce, could take it on, Alberto could take it on, whoever wants to do it. I think getting into the Google Calendars and getting into the automated systems where we set up an automated reminder to remind us every 2 weeks that this is now required. You know, everyone's going upfront pay stop. So that's what I want to get, is eventually that this is all automated. And then it's not really about any single person making sure it happens. It's just in our automated system.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's do concerns. Any concerns? None? No concerns?
No concerns.
Any objections?
No objections.
All right, so we have consensus. So that took a really long time. but it was super duper important. It technically is only one of 2 proposals that we had. So I don't know if we want to skip the other one or if we want to take a 5-minute break and then come back and then do the other proposal. The other proposal was on the policy tracking.
I would definitely take the break, 5-minute break, and then I will definitely do the other proposal. I think these are top priorities that we need
If you
to.
want to keep it really simple, the proposal would basically be, to update the previous policy tracking policy on policy tracking, right? Policy on policy tracking to have everyone choose a number between basically 0 to 9 that represents where we are in the policy implementation spectrum, with 5 being, the middle or expected average. Okay, so that would be the proposal. And in this way, we don't actually have to review and actually make all the changes. But what this proposal would do is actually change the previous proposal. So if we wanted to spend a lot more time on it, we could get the previous proposal, we could go through all the details, and we could actually change the language. But that can be done at a later time by the staff. So when you change a proposal, the staff is the ones who are supposed to actually implement the change of the proposal in the bylaws and the policy documents and the response to the organization. Okay. So let's take a 5-minute break. When we come back, we go.
I mean, what we could include in the proposal eventually is to make it fast is that it supersedes any other conflicting policy or policy keeping.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't actually need to supersede it. Though. The detail is simply that you would do this first and then go on to all the other detailed policy aspects, right? So everything else in the policy still is applicable. We just say do this first, right? Because before, basically, we would go over every single policy, which is dozens and dozens of, right? And we never have time to do that. So instead, instead of spending like 5 minutes on it, literally always spend 5 seconds doing the number.
All right. So yes, let's take a 5-minute break and let's get into it. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Cool. 5-minute break.